fall down, testing signs for the down, and the forest is cold.
Having crawled out of the world of dubstep, Harmonimix, aka James Blake, has brought his eclectic and minimalist sound into the open, accompanied by an auto-tuned, gospel-inspired choir. The result of this is an 11-track self-titled album, which is in short, fantastic and unique. The album is made up of syncopated drums, pads, synths, samples and loops, all of which provide an ample backing for James Blake's creamy lead vocal, which seems to have crawled out of the woodwork in this album, being most prominent on one of the last tracks, Measurements. Blake's time spent touring with Mount Kimby has obviously influenced this album heavily, as, similarly to Kimberly, so Kimberly? Who the fuck is Kimberly? He has developed the talent to chop up analog synths and samples, mash them together with his own vocals, and create an amazing sound. A prime example of this is the Wilhelm Scream, one of the singles off the album, and allegedly a cover of one of his dad's old songs. A filter on the vocals and rushing synth effects create this amazing soundscape of just pure awesomeness. Top tracks include I Never Learned to Share, Unluck, the Wilhelm Scream, and his cover of Feist Limits Your Love, which has a sub-bass that I assure you will shake your bowels. In a good way. Though the music itself is excellent, the real gem of this album is the production. Whipping on a pair of headphones and skipping through Blake's stereo world is so pleasurable, and the most remarkable thing about this is it's all recorded in his bedroom. Whenever I try to record something in my bedroom, it turns out like this. So, whether you're a professional or the only thing you've ever produced is a cover of Crazy Frog you once performed in your sister's room and put up on YouTube, I highly recommend you listen to this album, as it definitely will benefit you. From a production point of view, this is a masterpiece. However, being the cynical bastard that I am, I do have a couple of digs with this album. Number 1. Repeated phrases. James Blake can't seem to make his mind up whether he actually wants to sing or whether he just wants to use himself as a sample. Like too many songs on the album. Unluck, Wilhelm Scream, I Never Learned to Share, Measurements. I mean, that's about 3 too many for my liking. Which leads me on to my next point. He can't really seem to make his mind up whether he wants to be a singer-songwriter who plays the piano with some drums and pads in the background, or whether he wants to stick heavily to his dubstep roots. People say that the mashup of the two is an amazing revolution, but I think that's a load of bollocks. James Blake has to pick where he wants to go in the next album. By all means, keep all the trippy synths and the cut-ups and the IDM kind of sound, but he's got to pick more of a direction if he wants his next album to be an even bigger success. And then my big gripe with the album is Why Don't You Call Me. One of the tracks midway through the album, it's a filling track, about 1.5 minutes long, and it's disjointed. I had to check to see if my vinyl wasn't scratched. I thought that there's a bit in the middle that samples his cover of Joni Mitchell's A Case of You, and I had no idea what was going on. It just seems like it was thrown in there, which leads me on to say a couple of the tracks seem like they're not finished. I mean, even though the production is amazing and the sound is incredible, a couple of them sound like he just has a little bit further to go with them. But I think Why Don't You Call Me was just a big error, and I think that shouldn't have been in the album. Which leads me on to the conclusion. So we have amazing production, amazing songwriting, and, amazing vocals, even though a little bit auto-tuned for my liking. And then we have the couple of negatives, that one song that we do not mention. And then the other one is these repeated phrases, which isn't such a big deal because it is a Passover album from his dubstep career. So, the vinyl verdict. Overall, I would give this album an 8 out of 10. I mean, there will be people out there who will argue that it deserves a little bit more, and it is one hell of an orgasmic album. But the issue is, I just have a big issue with these vocals. James Blake's got an amazing voice, but I just don't think he utilises it enough. And also I have a big problem with this track in the middle, Why Don't You Call Me? But honestly, whether you're a producer, just an easy listener, by all means, buy this album. Thank you for watching. Next time I will be reviewing Quez's new album. Thank you.
You see your